A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to say.
You got f***ing grow, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast on this Monday, January 16th of 2023. I'm Paul Gallant. You can interact with this show live, twitch.tv/Gallant Says or youtube.com/Paul Gallant every weekday afternoon at 1 o'clock Central Time until about 1:30 or so. But you can also listen to this wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud as well. Super wild card weekend is in the books. I think we got 4.5 great games. First half of Seahawks and 49ers. Seahawks held their own. They deserve a lot of credit for being able to make that happen. Then all the mistakes started happening in the second half. Deebo Samuel has the big catch and run for a touchdown. They run away with it. Saturday night, the Los Angeles Chargers, chargered, using that as a verb, in a way that franchise only knows how to do. Bailing out Trevor Lawrence, who threw 4 interceptions in the first 10 minutes. You also had a Jaguar muffed punt in that first half. They were down 27-0. They ultimately win at the end 31-30. You have some other games as well. You had in the early afternoon game between the Bills and Dolphins. The Bills played sloppily. Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins hung around until Mike McDaniel's bad play clock management caught up with him. But credit to Miami for making that one a close one. Kirk Cousins had the most Kirk Cousins ending possible in the mid-afternoon game against a Giants team that, with Brian Daboll at the helm, looks really good. Daniel Jones played the best game of his career, but man, Kirk Cousins on a 4th and 8, throwing a ball short of the sticks, and then afterwards saying, yeah, well, I didn't feel comfortable trusting Justin Jefferson in that one play, and it's not the end of the world when you throw a check down on 3rd and long, 4th and long. Oh boy, not a great look. But I want to focus on the Sunday night football game, a game between the Cincinnati Bengals, who would take down the Baltimore Ravens, 24-17, the final score in that game. Baltimore had the ball on Cincinnati's 1-2-yard line, and the big difference at the end is Tyler Huntley, quarterback, subbing in for an injured former MVP, Lamar Jackson, as he dives for the end zone. From very far out, the ball's knocked out of his hands, picked up by Sam Hubbard, who runs the opposite way for a touchdown. Football one-on-one, if it is not 4th down, you better be damn careful when you try to extend the ball past a first down measurement or past the goal line, because it could get punched out, could turn into a fumble. That's the difference in the game right there. Some people are wondering how the Baltimore Ravens would have played had Lamar Jackson been healthy for that game. You might have remembered on Thursday that he released a statement, and in that statement, he said, look, I'm not going to be able to go 100%. And you want to respect a player who doesn't feel like he's at his absolute best, not playing in a game. You have seen in the past where there's lots of quarterbacks who have probably played at well less than 100%, but okay, that's neither here nor there. We're just focusing on the here and now. Why, though, couldn't Lamar Jackson have shown up with the rest of his teammates? That is what I can't get. And I'm wondering if you joining us right now on the YouTube side of things or joining us in the Twitch chat, if you actually can think up a legitimate excuse as to why he did not play for Baltimore in that game, let alone show up for Baltimore in that game. I understand if he's less than 100% not being there. But, dude, why not be there for the rest of your teammates? The report from Melissa Stark right before kickoff was that he's injured, unable to play, but it was a surprise that he did not travel with the team. And look, he's in the middle of a contract kerfuffle with Baltimore. Beginning of the year, negotiations were called off so that the team could focus on the season. I think that's a bit of a lame excuse, especially once Jackson was injured. What, is the general manager going to be distracted from weekly game planning because he's trying to negotiate an extension with a guy who's not playing? He's been out since December 4th when he injured his left knee against Denver. And it was a week-by-week injury for a while until he put out that post. Jeez, I'm having a tough time speaking English. When he put out that post on Twitter about a month plus later, he said, "I've suffered a PCL grade 2 sprain on the borderline of a strain 3. I don't know what any of that means. There is still inflammation surrounding my knee, and my knee remains unstable. I'm still in good spirits as I continue with treatments on the road to recovery. I wish I could be out there with my guys more than anything, but I can't give a 100% of myself to my guys and fans. I'm still hopeful. We still have a chance." And look, you play to win the game. Tyler Huntley's out there. Okay, if Baltimore plays well enough, maybe Baltimore is going to be playing in the next round of the playoffs. And I remember while Baltimore was on the 1-yard line, with either the ability to kick a go-ahead field goal, Justin Tucker, their kicker, is one of the best in NFL history. At the very least, they were going to be up 3. I was actually writing out a tweet on my iPhone, wondering aloud what Lamar Jackson might do should Baltimore pull off the victory. And then, of course, Hubbard goes the other way. The rest is history. But to go back to that quote, I wish I could be out there with my guys more than anything, but I can't give a 100% of myself to my guys and fans. It's one thing to say that when you're talking about whether or not you can play. But why can't you be there for the rest of your teammates? Why weren't you there for the rest of your teammates? Please, give me a reason as to why he didn't travel with the team. Is he afraid of planes? Is Cincinnati such a shithole of a city that he can't find himself anywhere within that realm? Like, he can't handle it? He went to Louisville. It's not that far away from Cincinnati. What gives here? I'm really struggling. Why is it that Jackson couldn't just be there on the sideline? Don't you think he could have helped Tyler Huntley out? Holding a clipboard, having a headset on, helping out with the offensive operation, helping out with offensive coordinator Greg Roman? Really, why wasn't he there? And I get it. Things are getting a little bit testy between him and the organization when it comes to contract negotiations. And maybe he feels that not being there is going to make the Ravens say, you know what? Man, we really need to make sure that he's out here next time around. But that's not what's going to happen now. Now, people are going to look at Lamar Jackson and remember this for a while. It's not what's going to define his career. And again, contract negotiations can get messy from time to time. But why didn't he show up? He just looks like a selfish, bad teammate here. And I understand why he might have done something like this, but I don't think that he thought about the repercussions of this. He doesn't have that much leverage this offseason. Baltimore made a big trade to get Roquan Smith away from the Chicago Bears, and they gave him a big extension. There's only one player on the Ravens that has the possibility of being given the franchise tag, which is what a team gives out to a player when they don't want to lose him. They give him that contract. He can play for 1 year under that contract. And given the way that Lamar Jackson regularly gets banged up, gets hurt, you can understand why Jackson maybe doesn't want to play under that. So flex a little bit. Don't play for the rest of the year. But I just do not see how there's a win here for Jackson in not showing up and being there on the sideline for the Ravens' loss to the Bengals. Why don't you just go? Why not? What's the win? No matter what, if you're not there, some people, whether they're speaking in bad faith or good faith, have a legitimate question to ask why you weren't there, to ask if you even want to be here. And next season, if you're one of his teammates, how would you feel knowing that he didn't even come to the game with you? And I'm sure some players are going to be asked about it, and publicly they're going to say something, but the private feelings of a player, you generally don't get that honesty on the record. You don't. Especially if we're talking about somebody discussing the star former MVP quarterback of his team. What are they going to say publicly about it? Other than what you heard from J.K. Dobbins, running back for the Ravens, who not only was pissed off that he didn't get the ball, and Huntley did and fumbled the ball there, he also said, we would have won this game with Lamar Jackson playing. Well, how does Dobbins feel about Jackson not even going to the game? It's a bad look. It is. There's no spin zone here. I'd love to hear an attempt. When I was talking about this earlier today on my radio show, the people that took issue brought up, well, what about Derek Carr leaving the Raiders with a couple of weeks to go in the year? And it's a totally different circumstance. Carr had been benched for poor play, meaning his time in Vegas was done. Jackson is hurt, and he doesn't have to go out there and play if he's not 100%. But isn't football a team game, and shouldn't you be there for your teammates? Shouldn't you try to help out? Honestly, I wonder, had the Ravens won with Huntley under center, I really do wonder if Jackson would have been back under center for next week's game, because I bet there would be a part of him that realizes, man, I might not be 100%, but I'm going to look so bad if I'm out and Tyler Huntley steps in for me and leads this team through the playoffs. Whether with a competent performance in a losing effort in the divisional round or a good performance that leads to a victory for Baltimore. So I haven't gotten one yet. Twitch.tv/Gallant says, YouTube.com/Paul Gallant on the most interactive podcast there is. Where's the legitimate excuse for Lamar Jackson not traveling with the team to Cincinnati? The answer is there is none. I got a little flack on Sunday night for a tweet that I put up. If you'd listened to my radio show on Friday, I said, based off the way that Lawrence has played the last couple of weeks, I think Lawrence is going to play poorly. He sucked on Saturday against the Tennessee Titans in that do-or-die game that helped Jacksonville ultimately win the AFC South. He played poorly. And if you've watched a lot of Trevor Lawrence this year, you've seen a lot of overthrows. You've seen him struggle from time to time. So I tweeted this out. Raise your hand if you said Lawrence was going to puke himself tonight. And oh boy, he really did. And you could take a look at the play write-up, the playlist at ESPN.com of just how bad Lawrence's start was. First throw of the game, intercepted. Second drive of the game, 4th and 7, Lawrence throws an interception at the Chargers 33. They go 3 and out on the very next drive. The next drive, 3rd and 5, Lawrence throws an interception. Jacksonville goes 3 and out on their next possession. And then 3rd and 10, Lawrence throws another interception. 4 interceptions. It's 24-0. The Chargers go 3 and out. And you think, okay, well, maybe Jacksonville can get back into this. The Jaguars muff the punt. One of the guys is going back in coverage. The ball bounces off his head. And the Chargers get a field goal. It's 27-0 with 4:25 to play in the second quarter. And you're thinking to yourself, the Jaguars are done with the way that Lawrence is playing. Jacksonville goes 3 and out, but the Chargers go 3 and out right back. And right before the half, Jacksonville moves down the field on a couple of short passes, and ultimately, it's 27-7 at the break. Game is far from over, but why would you believe that things were going to improve for Trevor Lawrence in his first ever playoff performance, unless you are a diehard Trevor Lawrence fan, right? So again, I put out the tweet. Raise your hand if you thought Lawrence was going to puke himself tonight. 4 interceptions in the first 10 minutes of the game. To Lawrence's credit, though, in the second half, things started to work for him. And ultimately, the Jaguars would come back and win that game 31-30. I do want to say that when it comes to what Lawrence actually did in the game, he was throwing a lot of short passes. And I suppose there's nothing wrong with winning a game by throwing a lot of short passes, but take a look at the playlist of all the plays that happened. He only threw 4 deep passes all game. One of them was intercepted. For the most part, dinking and dunking and dinking and dunking and dinking and dunking. 28 of 47, not great, for 288 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. So they win. And all of a sudden, I found my Twitter mentions dealing with a lot of this. Manna Fresh. Update, Paulie. We need an update. Dr. Dre on 290. Paul, another one. I'm scrolling back on my timeline. Ouch. These people are retweeting me saying that I said Lawrence was going to puke himself. And he did. So this is what I want to understand. If a guy plays poorly at the beginning of a game, but at the end of the game plays well, does that mean he had a good game or even a great game? Because there's no denying that Trevor Lawrence was fucking garbage in the first quarter of that game. Can't deny it. And you're supposed to, as a sports broadcaster, as an analyst, you're supposed to respond to that in real time. Hey, here is what is happening. And I know some people are smart and just stay off Twitter altogether. But tweets can hover in the air, and it does seem like the ones that get the most engagement are the ones that took place during a different reality. Because they linger. And that opinion can't change, even if the opinion of the person who tweets it out does change. And it becomes an gotcha kind of moment. So I guess my question is, if I see somebody that I believe was going to shit himself during a game, am I supposed to not say anything about it until the actual end of the game? Don't react at all? Because what the Jaguars did was miraculous and certainly was helped by the fact that the Chargers are a choking dog franchise. Lawrence, to his credit, did enough in the second half to help the Jaguars win. And I do think that he deserves credit for being able to shake off those 4 interceptions. But I think it's weird that social media is the kind of place where you will dunk on somebody who correctly pointed out that Lawrence was fucking awful in the first half, when in the second half, he's decent to good. Made all the right decisions, was actually more accurate with his passes. He certainly played better in the second half. But was that a great game by Trevor Lawrence? They won. That's all that matters. But he turned it over 4 times. In 2023, with the sub 60% completion percentage. That's bad. It's hard to do that in today's NFL. This isn't the days of Brett Favre. This isn't the days of, hell, go way back to Joe Namath, where interceptions were a more regular occurrence. Because of the rules that hamstring defenders so, you don't very often see quarterbacks throwing a ton of interceptions over the course of a year. You really don't. Unless it was like Jameis Winston a couple of years ago. But that is by far the outlier. So this is going to sound like I'm defending my own take here. I'm not really. But he did shit his pants in the first half. You can crap yourself and clean yourself up and shake it off and completely own it. You watched Billy Madison. Billy's little friend Ernie pisses himself when they're on the retreat. Billy pretends to pee himself and makes it seem like it's cool to pee yourself. Trevor Lawrence made it seem like it's cool to shit yourself. But he did shit himself. And because he played well in the second half, what happened in the first half didn't happen at all. Like 4 interceptions is a lot, especially in the first 10 minutes of a game. Waka Flocka Buck says Lawrence sucks. He regressed every year in college too. Well, I'm not going to go that far to say that he sucks. He sucked in the first half. I think he's decent. I don't think he is the prince that was promised. I would say he's shown some ability to be a good quarterback in this league. Consistency, though, is the biggest thing in the NFL. You got to find a way week to week to be, for the most part, the same guy every single week. Lawrence has not shown that yet. I mean, shit, we're seeing a guy that's a totally different player from the first half to the second half. And as he gets older, I'm sure he can improve on that front. This is going to give him a lot of confidence going forward. I could have the absolute worst game that I've ever played, and yet, despite my best receivers being Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, I can lead a team on a comeback. I mean, this could be a big game for Trevor Lawrence going forward. So I'm not denying that, and I do think it's an extreme thing to say that Lawrence sucks. But I've never been as all in on him the way that some were leading up to this game. And I don't think you should be walking away from the game saying, wow, Trevor Lawrence proved all the doubters wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't. You should be saying Doug Peterson kept things together, was ballsy. Joey Bosa gets called for that kind of BS personal foul. They decided to go for 2, and it made the Chargers, I think, cake their pants more than Lawrence had in the first half. Because all of a sudden, now it's not even a field goal game. It's a 2-point game. And if the Chargers aren't able to get a first down, I mean, what happens next? Are they going to lose based off of on a field goal or something like that? I think that Peterson did a great job of putting the issue to the Chargers, and Brandon Staley did not handle it well. The Chargers as a team did not handle it well. Justin Herbert as a quarterback, who a lot of people also sing praises of, did not handle it well. Herbert is getting out of this rather clean, considering that he's as much a part of this as Brandon Staley. Why wasn't he able to do anything over the course of this game? How many short fields did the Jaguars set the Chargers up with? That should have been a much, much worse score for the Jaguars at the end of that first half. And the Chargers did not take advantage of many of the opportunities that they were given. Before we hit the road, I want to talk about something that took place on the southwest side of Houston. I'm not sure how many people heard about this story. This is on about 10 days ago or so, and I wanted to give it a little bit of breathing room so that we could get all the details of the story. A customer at Ranchito Taqueria shot and killed a man who robbed the restaurant in southwest Houston late on Thursday night. So I believe that was January 5th. It happened just before 11:30 p.m. on a Thursday. An armed man in a mask came inside the restaurant, demanding money and wallets from customers. However, as he was leaving, one of those customers shot the suspect. And you might have seen it. Fox 26 has the video, and I'm going to show it right now. Twitch.tv/Gallant says, YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. Here you see right now, as this robber walks through the store with what looks to be a gun while masked up. A customer pulled a gun out, and I'm not a gun expert. I'm not going to act like I'm a gun expert. In what potentially could be dangerous to the guy that's sitting in the back corner, pulls the gun out, and then the video stops there. And he unloaded on him. From the report, it seems that the customer shot him over and over again as he was down on the ground, and then picked up the money that had been taken from people in the shop, picked up the gun, found out that it was a BB pistol, and then he throws it essentially at the wall in disgust. He then left. I think he should have stayed for police to eventually come, but he left. Whatever the case, it's been interesting to see the reactions to this story. First off, from people outside of town. I'm of the belief that if somebody pulls a gun on you, you do not know what is going to happen next. And if you feel like your life is in danger, you can do something about it. If you have a pistol on you, it's going to be easier to do that. In other situations, if somebody does have a gun on me, and you can't tell whether it's fake or real, I am probably going to do exactly what that robber tells me to do because I'm scared for my life. I think anybody acting like things would be different, you're sounding a little bit like Mark Wahlberg talking about how if he were on one of the 9/11 flights, he would have actually stopped it. But in this story, you got a lot of response like this, and I'm going to show some of them on Twitter. Roy responded to the tweet of the story by KHOU. Somebody's child didn't have to die. He was leaving and never threatened the man that killed him. Arrest him later. Well, he threatened everybody by bringing a gun into the store, right? That's what's interesting about this. If you're going to try and take people's property from them with a pistol that shows that you're willing to perhaps kill that person, I mean, isn't the person justified thinking that maybe you would turn around and perhaps pull the gun on him again? Zach the Texan says, I'd say the customer went far over. Under $500, just let the guy get away. This same place got robbed a few days later. I did see the video of it getting robbed a few days later. I think that the shooting of the guy while he was on the ground and was a tad much. It did seem like he was incapacitated. I guess it would be a pain in the ass to stand over the suspect and have a gun pointed at him the whole time. But once he's down on the ground and once the gun's out of his hands, don't you kick the gun away? And I guess he came up to him and shot him from behind while he was lying down on the ground. That was too far. I saw, I think it was Quan LX, who's regularly on Fox 26, said, hey, like that's going too far. But it is interesting to see the way that some people are so defensive of it. And I'm just going to say, in response to the actual story that was posted, the story that was posted just says the details, caught on camera, a customer at a taqueria shot and killed a robber. It shows the video, and it doesn't even show the after. And a lot of people responded to the story, and I'm guessing they didn't actually read the post because I don't think many people read stories these days. I don't think people really feel like they have the time. But another, this is from Jose on Twitter. The death penalty is not in the sentencing guidelines for armed robbery. I guess the guy did bring a gun in. What if somebody had died there? He brought in what turned out to be not a real gun. Let me rephrase that. What if he had shot somebody? You're a panicky robber. You're trying to get money. You're trying to keep an entire room full of people from perhaps rushing you. You're going to be nervous in that situation if you go in there and realize that this is a get in, get out kind of situation. If you're in there and all of a sudden things don't go 100% according to the plan that you laid out, who's to say that you wouldn't have shot somebody? Zach the Texan says it's a fake gun, but how are you supposed to know it's a fake gun? This isn't like one of those toy fake guns that you have when you're growing up that's got the little orange thing on the end of it, like the safety markers, which is supposed to, I guess, help make sure that you don't end up getting killed. Hendricks responded, I don't know, but this don't seem right. Nobody's life was in danger. You don't know that in the situation. If somebody comes in there with a gun on you, how would you know that your life isn't in danger? You're putting money on the floor, whether it's under $500 or over $500, you're putting money on the floor. You're probably thinking that this person has the means to take you out. Zach the Texan continues. Very point that the customer could have hit the table on the end. Customer should not have kept shooting him. I agree with you that he shouldn't have kept shooting him. But some of the responses here, contrary to public opinion, robbing a restaurant is not a death sentence. Well, what if you're coming in there with, intent to perhaps commit bodily harm on others? So it is only low-level crimes, writes another one. This is Ray Johnson, whose punishment has been upgraded to the death penalty. Or is it all crimes? But this isn't the death penalty. This is fuck around, find out. You go into a situation with a gun. What happens if somebody else has a gun and you don't know that that person has a gun? Another response. Gun laws needed. This is sickening. I guess. You can still find fake guns and come in and rob a store. If you have a fake gun, how are you supposed to, when that person, if you bring in a fake gun to a robbery or something like that, and somebody asks you, hey, is that gun real? What are you going to do? You're going to say like, well, actually, it's not. It's not a real gun. You got me. You're just going to put the gun down and wait till cops get there and have a nice hoot as you wait for authorities? No, that's not going to happen. I do think that if you take a look at the actual video, and there's a link to it, I think fox26.com, KHOU as well, the 9 shots, including the shots as he lay on the ground and the one final shot into the head, were too much. The guy shouldn't have robbed the store. I think saying something is or isn't justified, it's the eye of the beholder. I think if you're going into a restaurant, though, with the gun, even if you're not looking to rob that much, if this happens to you, you're kind of asking for it. Zach the Texan says this is how shootouts start. I suppose, but shootouts start when a guy tries to rob the restaurant. Like, that's what started this whole thing to begin with. And I do think that you got to be careful in situations if you are deciding to yourself, you know what, I have a gun. I am going to defend myself. I'm going to defend everybody else here. I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to shoot somebody. You got to make sure you don't shoot anybody else. And at the very end, I do think that the guy went a little bit above and beyond. But the person who started this is the person who brought the gun into the situation. And in Texas, this is just how things go like that. Anyway, appreciate y'all for tuning in for today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. Twitch.tv/Gallant Says, YouTube.com/Paul Gallant. If you want to interact with the show as it goes on, like Zach the Texan will like Waka Flocka Bucks. Big thanks to everybody who did tune in. And of course, this show is in podcast form too. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud. Thank you so much for subscribing, rating, reviewing. If you haven't already, please do so. So long, farewell, have yourselves a wonderful Monday. We'll be back.